Because in one manner of speaking, and this is just a manner of speaking, to wake up, to really wake up, is really nothing more than this imaginary self abdicating its throne, so that spirit can operate freely, can express itself freely through these amazing vehicles it has created. Spirit has created these vehicles, human bodies, minds, and everything else you can see, taste, touch, or feel. Has created them, and yet they seem to take on a life of their own. And as long as they're living their life, spirit in its clear aspect, because remember, everything is spirit. That's why all is well. Even when it's a ridiculous, nonsense, diluted disaster, it's still spirit. Which is one of the things Krishna showed Arjuna, and he just didn't want to see it. He told Krishna to turn that off. And he asked to see the good side. So even though the truth can manifest as illusion, that doesn't mean it's still not illusion. So awakening in one sense is nothing more than when this thing gets created, body, mind, human being, it tends to take a life on of its own. Those of you who've had children, you've watched it happen. You've seen it happen. It's not a bad thing, by the way. It happens to everybody, pretty much. This thing comes into the world, this wonderful being. Of course, it has its own personality right out of the womb in many ways, the beginnings of it. And yet, as it grows up, it takes on a life of its own. Ego gets developed, and ego grabs hold of it, and it is its own. And when it solidifies and grabs hold and takes it as its own, then ego at some point goes, I don't like what I've done. Can I return it or go back on the deal or whatever? It's just inherently not ultimately satisfying. And so the process, I wouldn't necessarily, it's easy to say it gets reversed, but that would be to imply that the spiritual enlightenment was a state where you just you regress back to, like when you were an infant, and that's not true at all. It's not a regressive thing at all. It's that the me lets itself go. Even though the me doesn't actually exist, it still lets itself go. And any moment that the me lets itself go, which is usually by accident, by the way. It's usually by accident. If the me's trying to let itself go, that's another way that it's holding on. Okay. Just get obsessed with letting go and see how well it goes. So when the me lets itself go, it's almost not so much that it lets go as that it's just sort of an accident. It stops holding on for its attention gets put elsewhere. That's when spirit comes through in its undiluted form. And as soon as that happens, that's what we call awakening.